It is sometimes a major problem for conservatives to grapple with history. If they can take pride in some history of their culture and people, can they avoid feeling shame for the same? Some say that you must either have both pride and shame, or neither. After all, if you can be proud of one thing that is good, then by what standard can you ignore some other thing that is bad? We need to examine why we take pride in some things and then, by applying the same standard, not be ashamed of other things. What sort of things evoke pride in a people? I will argue that it has to be something unique and repeatable. First, a brief word on why we feel pride in our ancestors' achievements at all. There are those who argue that we have no reason to feel proud of their achievements, but I contend that we do. Take some kind of achievement. The achievement might be the work of a man or woman, or a group thereof, but the men and women are themselves products of a culture which is in turn the product of a whole people. Why would we be proud of the scientist, for example? The scientist was a product of his culture and people, the farmers who provided the food, the textile workers who provided the clothes, the smiths and engineers who made the tools to harvest the food and make clothes, medicines, buildings, horses and carts, etc., the inventors and craftsmen who made the scientific instruments, the teachers who passed on the knowledge behind the mathematics and science to the scientist, the people who established and maintained the academies to recognize the scientific work, the businessmen who invested in the work, the printers who allowed others to learn of the work, the men who made the printers and the ink, etc., etc. It is one scientist, but behind him stands his culture and people. You are descended from those people, and you have inherited their culture. The people and culture produced the scientist and his achievement, so you know that the culture and people were good then, and are likely good now. You take pride in the scientist and his achievement as an example of what your culture and people could do then, and can do now, and will do in the future. You are actually taking pride in your people and culture today when you take pride in the past. What happened in the past represents what could happen today. What they did represents what you can do. Their tools led to that achievement. You have the same tools. Your tools are their tools. Their achievement is your achievement. Therefore, it is right to take pride in the achievements of men long dead. As for the achievements in which you take pride, they have to be unique and repeatable. By unique, I mean that no other people or culture achieve quite the same thing. Whatever the achievement is, it is not a copy of something else, or quite the same as something else. The French did not invent concerts, but their composers are not the same as Mozart. The English won at Agincourt and Waterloo, but those are different battles from Verdun. Michael Schumacher, a German, won the Formula One championship 7 times, but he won under different circumstances compared to Jim Clark, a Scot, or Alain Prost, a Frenchman. A cultural people takes pride in those achievements that are specific to it. By repeatable, we expect our culture to consistently produce achievements. That is to say that the culture, people, industries, resources, expertise, forms of government, etc., if allowed to operate freely, will, in theory, keep producing one type of achievement or another. We already looked at the example of a scientist. If he truly was the product of his people and culture, then we would expect that same people and culture to keep producing scientists. Otherwise, that scientist was a fluke and not representative of the culture. The British don't produce one engineer, but many down the decades. The Germans produce a string of excellent soldiers, the Italians produce painters and explorers, the Irish produce poets and authors, the Brazilians produce footballers. These are repeatable feats from each culture and people. Now that we have established in what we can take pride, let's apply the same standard to that of which we should feel ashamed, something unique and repeatable. We would tend to feel shames for things that produce misery, suffering, and death, or that limit freedom, or similar. If it is repeatable, then it will keep producing these things if allowed to operate freely. If it is unique, then it is specific to a culture or people, or at least not common across many cultures or peoples. I will now demonstrate that there is no reason to feel shame over slavery, colonialism, or the Holocaust in the West, with the caveat that we will explore. Slavery. It is repeatable. It will, by definition, cause suffering. We are halfway towards feeling ashamed of it in our time. However, it was not unique in its time. For a culture to have had slavery in, say, 1800 was no indication that there was anything wrong with the culture compared to other cultures at the time. Slavery was ubiquitous. There is therefore nothing wrong with having had it as part of your culture in the past. In the present, most places have abandoned slavery. It is no longer part of the culture, therefore one need not feel shame in the slavery of the past. With the scientist, you are proud because you have the same tools that led to his achievement, but with slavery, your culture has changed and you lack those tools. You cannot feel shame for tools that are not part of your culture, any more than you can feel pride for achievements that are not part of it. The caveat is if your culture or people started slavery again, then you should feel ashamed, because to restart slavery is a fairly unique thing, and it is a repeatable source of misery. However, if the slavery is confined to the past, then there is no reason to feel ashamed of it. The same goes for colonialism. It was not unique in the past, and is not part of the culture today. The Holocaust was unique but not repeatable as a historical event. It was the product of an amazing coincidence of events. To name a few, you need a Second World War. You need to almost beat Russia but not quite, giving you both the space and the fog of war in which to conduct mass shootings and build the Reinhardt camps. You need to have the specific men and policies of the Nazi leadership and the specific events that led them to take power, including a First World War, the Versailles Treaty, communism in Russia and a fear of communists taking over Germany, a Wall Street crash, etc. This is not a repeatable event and does not represent a typical operation of German culture. Therefore, Germans today do not need to feel shame, and neither does anyone else. Thus, by our standards of uniqueness and repeatability, one can confidently take pride in their people, history, and culture without having to be ashamed.